I do not make narrative. I don't like to make narrative, and I don't like to have continuity, and I find the continuity too imposed on the spectator. I prefer to open the frame in such a way that the spectator can read and reread and have multiple readings and somehow have an individualistic association with the image, not only during the watching of the film, but also once the person leaves the film, that it might have consequential image association or sensations or desires or various pleasures. So it's not just the time of the film that I look for from achieving my gratification comes if the film can start to have repercussions with the spectator outside of the cinema that can have something to do with that pleasure or that desire. So it could be simply for the beauty of things to be had, and it could be instinctive as well. In other words, if you feel happy and you feel like you enjoyed the film and suddenly you start to feel hungry, that's gratifying for me. If you want to suddenly start to have sexual arousal because you've seen my film, I'm very happy. Anything that would, in the hippie way, would make love and not war is, for me, gratifying. So for me, it starts from the pleasure of the image, from constructing an aesthetic dimension that can actually start to somehow have a kind of a vibration of I want to be happy and I want to make things better. I know that this is not exactly the content of the film, because the film also speaks about global violence, and it speaks about globalization, and it speaks about the most regressive moment of any history we have lived, and it speaks about fascistic regimes and dictators and checkpoints and, well, name it. I think I also made this film because I was always feeling that that there's something not being talked about, because we read headlines, we know that there are quite a lot of fires and ice melting and revolutions taking place and protests and hashtags. But what we don't really somehow talk about, or maybe I think it needs to be talked about, or I think it's something that exists somewhere, is the fact that suddenly my feeling is we live in a global ghetto. And in a ghetto, usually we are reaching a certain despair. And in ghettos, when we reach that despair, we turn this despair into humor for the sake of resisting finality. We try to somehow expand the limits of time in order to survive the catastrophe, the apocalyptic moment that we are living. I think personally we are living this at this moment. I wanted to basically, I wondered if what I feel personally, individually, as a lonesome sort of feeling, a kind of very interior alienation, I would say, even to extend it, a certain fear that I wake up with and I live with during the day, but that I'm sometimes timid and shying away from expressing it to even my dear partner or to my friends, because I don't want to start to also make the other anxious about my own feelings. But the reason why I made this film essentially was because I thought if there is any way to have a consolation and reach out, and maybe some of us in their most intimate moment can start to talk about this fear and this alienation that we are living, but we are not exactly expressing, which is a very individual and very solitary feeling. That was the initiation of this film.